You're watching How to Get Away with Murder, the Rap Report, Episode 8, He Has a Wife. I'm your host, Sophia Stanley, joined by...
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Cornelia.
And I'm Bam Erickson.
So we are going to get right into this episode because there were a lot of juicy tidbits. And again, I think the most important one is the title of the episode, He Has a Wife, right? So did you guys think that the entire episode was somewhat about karma, that you reap what you sow, especially regarding Annalise and Sam, with the opening scene where she has to, in essence, confront her husband, and not only did he have an affair with the murdered girl, but that he got her pregnant? How did you guys think that that scene played out, especially as it related to not only Annalise, but also Bonnie?
I didn't think it was karma until Annalise called it karma. I just thought the whole time that she married a dirtbag dude, you know, because he was pushing up on Bonnie. He had the young girl, the virgin, pregnant Lila. He was cheating with Annalise on his other wife. I was like, he's just a dirtbag. But then when she said it was karma, I was like, oh, I can see how she thinks, you know, I can see how she feels that way. But not until she mentioned karma that I started thinking it was karma. And I still kind of don't think it, I mean, I understand the concept of karma, but I think in this case, she just got with a dirtbag.
How about you, Bam?
I have to agree. I don't think of it as karma. I think, you know, like she said to Michaela, you know, choose wisely the man that you marry.
That's a very great point, ma'am. So what do you think about the fact that she, in essence, ordered Bonnie to stay in the room as a witness to tell if Sam was lying? I thought that was a little weird, right? Given the fact that should you know whether or not your husband is lying, number one. Number two, to have Bonnie bear witness is kind of bringing her into this intimate space, because not only is it your husband, but you're literally and figuratively in your bedroom discussing bedroom antics.
You know,
is it weird in any way?
It's weird, but it's not weird. I'm going to kind of cross over to Scandal just for a second.
Sure.
Olivia, her whole concept was trusting her gut. And at some point, she lost that. She couldn't really trust her gut anymore. And Annalise clearly can't trust her gut anymore because she can't tell when her husband's lying. So she's so conflicted, she can't really trust her gut. So she needs someone else. And Bonnie's always there. You know, it seems like Bonnie is her homegirl or someone she can trust. Or there's a reason that Bonnie could literally knock on the door when she didn't have a wig on. So there's some kind of trust comfort that Annalise has. So she needs any and everything to help try and figure out, is her husband lying or telling the truth?
I took it a different way. I took her asking Bonnie to come in there because I think Annalise has a problem with how Bonnie may feel about Sam. So I kind of took it as she told Bonnie to stay in there so Bonnie can see this is a dirtbag. Like, you, Bonnie, are you hearing this? You like him. You all in his face. He's all in your face. I don't know what y'all have done, or maybe we don't know if they've slept together in the past, you know, if something happened. But I took her and Bonnie to come in there as, yeah, Bonnie, hear yourself so what I deal with, so you can deal with it too.
That's a really, really great point. But do you think that two, I guess, different questions. One, Bam, regarding your point that she no longer trusts her gut. Do you think that that's problematic if you can't trust your gut with your own husband? I guess that's the first question. And then the second question, as it relates to Bonnie, what do you think how does it serve Annalise's purpose of Bonnie thinking her husband is a bad dude, but yet she's willing to defend him and possibly be unethical in her pursuit to protect him from a murder if in fact he's a good guy? Can you theoretically do both?
Well, the fact for the first question is absolutely I think most women or even men, you know when the relationship is over, or you have a feeling that you're being cheated on. When you think that the other person is cheating, they're cheating. And with her, she needs to now bring in someone else to figure out if her husband's lying or not, which means he's lying, but she needs confirmation from someone else to help. I'm getting lost in thought.
Okay, but this is my issue is if Annalise thinks that there is either something going on between Sam and Bonnie, or she definitely feels like Bonnie has a little bit of that puppy dog love towards her husband, wouldn't then you assume that Annalise and Bonnie are kind of in the same position, i.e. the fact that they both love Sam, then it allows both of their guts to be off, right? So meaning, for instance, it would have been a completely different scenario if she had brought Frank into the room. Because as we've seen, Frank isn't within that inner circle. Frank doesn't get to knock on her bedroom door. Frank doesn't get to see her in an intimate moment when she doesn't have her wig. I'm going to call it her armor, right? Bonnie does. So the fact that Bonnie is in almost a pseudo-intimate space and also has feelings for Sam, wouldn't she then also be fooled by Sam saying, oh my goodness, I didn't hurt her, I didn't know she was pregnant?
Well, does Bonnie have feelings for Sam, or is she just a creepy woman, period? She looks the same way at everybody in a very creepy way, whether it's men or women. She's freaking creepy. Does she really like Sam?
Well, okay, well, let's fast forward. So, there were tons of flashbacks that we kept seeing with Lila and Rebecca, and I definitely think that the reason for that is so that Lila, to us as the viewers, is now a real person that we feel for, and we realize that she was young and innocent and naive, right? But then when, Bonnie confronts Sam or talks to Sam and says, I thought you were at Yale that night, Lila came to see me, we see that flashback, and she basically says to him, or she asks him a question, and I'm going to try to get this right, because there's a certain way in which she asked it which seemed weird to me, right? She goes, Sam, this isn't Annalise asking, this is me. So basically, in essence, what she's saying is, please tell me the truth. Did you know that Lila was pregnant? And then she basically states, I'm asking you, me, not Annalise, as if that somehow has greater weight.
Or as if they were kicking it at some point in time. That's why I said, thinking back, that's why I was like, oh, Annalise invited Bonnie in that room because of what Bonnie and Sam may have had or their relationship. Because Bonnie, the way she just the way she interacts or is always around Annalise always has a problem with Bonnie. She always has this, like, she gives her this permanent side eye. And up until this episode, I was like, well, what's the problem? I think me and Bonnie slept together. Said that, Sophia, which said, I'm asking you as me. I was like, oh, he probably done had sex with her too. This guy is the worst.
But then do you think that Bonnie is a little bit off of her head for thinking that simply because they slept together that he would be more honest with her than his own wife? But
she got him because he did confess. He did say, well, there was no point in me lying to her. There was no point in me telling her the truth at this time. So Sam did confess to Bonnie. So
that's a good point. That's an excellent point. Well, we're going to leave the latter scene towards the end of our broadcast. But does that change the fact that Bonnie possibly either had some type of relationship with Sam or that she has feelings for Sam? Does that kind of mess with her credibility as, one of Annalise's trusted associates? And more importantly, let's kind of jump to Frank and Laurel. She basically told Laurel not to sleep with Frank because Frank would catch real feelings, right? But we then come to find out that Frank has a girlfriend. Why do you think that storyline is there? Do you think it's just to be salacious so that we see Frank and Laurel getting it on? Or do you think it's leading us somewhere that Bonnie kind of can't be trusted? Bonnie's motives aren't pure, or how she communicates things isn't how they really are?
I don't know why they're telling us this Frank thing. Like, I still can't really figure out what the point is. Like, okay, we know they're having sex. We now see that Frank has a girlfriend. Okay. Like, I don't know what I'm looking for when I'm watching that. So that's just one of those storylines where I'm like, okay, like that's cool. Well, dang, that's messed up. He has a girlfriend. Okay.
But Laurel has a boyfriend, or is this before? Is this pre before she got with the other guy that
No,
she?
she's currently with Con.
So who cares?
Okay. Okay. Well, for me, I go say that again, Bam.
There was just another statement that I was gonna make is, why does she allow his half-naked body as the contact when you call? There's a picture of Frank, and I think
No. It's not his contact. It's that he sent her a picture. It wasn't that. It's not that it's the contact. It's that he sent her. Oh no, actually, Bam, you could be right.
But no, he said, remember he said, do you like the picture? No, she had the phone sitting down when they left the apartment, he said, when she was in the shower. He took the phone and uploaded his picture on her phone. So, and saved it as his picture ID. So that's why she was like, why did you do that? He was like, do you like it when you were in the shower?
Okay, I get that now. But even when they were in the midst of hiding the body,
right,
he still didn't change she didn't change it.
Right, I agree. And I'm gonna kind of go off in left field here for a second. I think what it's showing, and there's kind of a lot of little crumbs that we keep seeing, is that no matter what, these are young kids, right? They're 1Ls. So for the most part, like, they're not seasoned associates. They haven't even graduated from law school yet. So I think it shows that there's a certain naivete towards them, despite the fact that they're extremely intelligent. And I think it shows the mistakes that they're making along the way, kind of in their normal life, is going to lead to the fact that they obviously are going to or have already made mistakes as it pertains to hiding or cleaning up Sam's murder. That, to me, is the only reason that they keep kind of dropping all of these little nuggets that, yeah, they're not that sophisticated, that, you know, Connor wasn't able to get all of the information out of the witness at the beginning, that, you know, Asher is just kind of a weirdo, do you know what I mean? Or that all of them have personal issues when it comes to being mature. I think that's kind of why they have that storyline to a certain extent, that Laurel should be smarter than having sex with Frank, given the fact that there's already a stigma that she's only in the group because she's pretty and Frank likes her. But other than that, I kind of agree with you. I'm not quite sure why that storyline is there. But, you know, let's kind of fast forward a little bit to the case of the week. As we've discussed, I really think that every time that they introduce a weekly case, the point in doing so is to teach us little legal nuggets, right? And we've talked about this on and offline, that eventually someone is going to be charged with Sam's murder, right? And that not only is someone going to be charged with Sam's murder, arguably it could be Annalise, or it could be somebody that we have grown attached to, and that the Fab Five are going to have to put together a defense and put together a case. So each of our weekly cases is, in essence, teaching us, the viewers and the 1Ls, how to defend whoever is going to be charged with Sam's murder, right? So how did you guys kind of just generally feel about this weekly case?
It was boring. I didn't like it.
How about you, Camelia?
I think I liked it because it kind of describes what may happen with Sam. Somebody killed the nanny, or, you know, the housekeeper. He pretty much lied and insinuated to his wife that she did it.
Exactly.
So she could clean up the body, in which is kind of the same. Somebody killed Sam. We know who it was. Somebody has to clean up the body. They're going to lie about it. So, I mean, I took it as, oh, okay, so this is kind of what they're dealing with in regards to how they're going to have to get rid of Sam, and if it's going to come out who actually killed him and who got rid of the body and what they did with it. Only difference with that is that's a family, and there weren't that many people involved. With Sam's murder, there's, what, 6, 7 people involved? So... Right. It's going to be, you know, they have a problem with that within itself.
I completely agree. Well, what do you think about the fact that when Annalise introed this case, she talked about animal instincts? How much do you think that animal instincts is going to play, right? And I'm going to go back to kind of your gut. So for instance, let's just ask the question, if in fact Sam was trying to or was going to kill Rebecca, does that give her the right to defend herself and potentially kill him?
It does. However, you don't put yourself in the line of fire if you don't have to. That girl, she's a troublemaker. And I'm not saying she's a troublemaker meaning she caused her own death and she's just out here reckless. However, she always pushes the envelope. She said, and I keep saying this, she likes making people uncomfortable. She went over there to the house with that whole fake I lost my glove story. Look, you know, when nobody was there except him. If you put yourself in a situation where you know the person who has a problem with you knows that you're on to them and knows you know more than you're letting on, and you could potentially be the person who says, yeah, it was him because my best friend told me that it was him, something might happen to you. She should have stay away from that dude. I guess she was trying to crack the case, but I mean, if you put yourself in that situation, that's like you hearing, that's like you saying in a bad neighborhood, you hearing about some of your boys gonna do a drive-by and you outside cutting the grass during the time when you know the drive-by is gonna happen. Get your butt in the house.
No, well said. So do you think it's the fact that she's so naive that she kind of thinks she's untouchable despite the fact that she's charged with murder, number one. Number two, that she has evidence that it's possible that Sam, who she's interacting with alone, could in fact be the murderer?
Yeah, I think she's definitely naive and arrogant. I would call it more arrogant than naive.
I wouldn't say naive. She has a chip on her shoulder due to whatever her background is. So there's a chip on her shoulder, and she thinks, you know, she's arrogant, and she thinks that, you know, she's untouchable. She's very manipulating the way she manipulates Wes. She's a girl that you just simply cannot trust. And I was even wondering, why is Rebecca and Lila friends? Because even in their conversation, it's like Lila is really talking to a wall, and Rebecca doesn't particularly care about what is being told to her.
Oh, that's so funny. I took it completely differently. I took it the exact opposite. I felt like this episode was the first time that I actually saw Rebecca as a real person. And to me, you know, and I think a lot of people have someone like this in their life. I think that they were able to be friends because they were so opposite. So Lila, I think, wanted to be Rebecca's friend or became her friend because she felt like she could tell her things outside of her quote-unquote perfect sorority life existence. I think she's a real person with real emotions, and she felt that with Rebecca wouldn't judge her. Rebecca kind of took her solely as she was. And to me, especially that last scene when they were on the roof and, you know, Lila said, oh, Mr. Darcy called it off, the way that Rebecca stayed and the way that Rebecca held her hand, I thought that was very endearing. And then I think if you think about, you know, a couple episodes ago when she said, you know, Lila was my friend when Lila's mom basically called her an animal, I think it really showed that she really genuinely cared for her, and that's why she wants to see justice. I feel like there's a certain aspect of her is she's not just trying to save herself, she really feels like justice should be done, and that's why she's willing to go along with me and potentially get some hair from Sam for a DNA test, and then later on possibly, you know, copy his computer to see if there's evidence of text messages. I feel like that's the only reason that they introduced those flashbacks is so that we genuinely could see Rebecca cared about Lila and that they genuinely were friends.
But then when she said something about, there was something that Lila said, and so she was like, okay. And then she was getting ready to leave, and then Lila was like, no, stay, you know, I need you to do something. It was kind of one of those things where it was something like, you know,
well, she goes, bad things happen. She goes, bad things happen when people have sex. And then Rebecca asked her, well, what happens? And she was like, well, I don't want to talk about it anymore. And then Rebecca goes, okay, I'll leave. But I think Rebecca was saying that meaning she felt uncomfortable. So I think she thought Lila was telling her to leave. And the way that Lila kind of grabbed her leg, and the way that she not only stayed, but that she kind of sat next to her. And again, I think the way that she held her hand, I think she was really trying to comfort her. She really felt that Lila was grasping or needed a friend and needed some kind of support, and she was willing to stay there and kind of be that support for her, even if it meant that they didn't need to talk.
Okay, I could see that.
Yeah.
And you gotta think about it. When we first saw them together, didn't they have a plate of Coke next to them? Like,
Yeah.
weren't they doing Coke?
Yes.
This ain't no regular old Pop-Tart friendship. You can't, when you sitting around just doing blow like that with your homegirl or your homeboy, the rules of a regular friendship are out of the window. Yes, you have to be more trusting with this person because you're doing something that's not necessarily considered okay to some people. But when I saw that, I was like, oh, this is a different kind of friendship. Because if they just on the roof, just like, hey girl, come up and let's do some blow, then this is no regular old BFF situation.
Okay, I like that. Well, the second thing I think that we learned about this weekly case is that we were introduced to character witnesses, correct? In so much as if the actual defendant is not willing to testify on their own behalf, in essence, what the defense needs to do is provide character witnesses, other people to testify as to their character, i.e. that they are not the type of person to either commit murder or if they did murder, there was a valid reason, right? So how do we think, let's kind of role play a little bit. How do we think to me, there are two possible people who could be tried for Sam's murder eventually. I think one of those is Rebecca, which is kind of the linear path that we're being led on. And the other person who possibly could be charged for Sam's murder is Annalise. And for several reasons. I think one of which is it would make for a great storyline. Two, it's almost always the wife. And three, I think that she, of all of the individuals that we've been introduced to, has the most motive, who has the best, most guttural motive. How do you think for both of those individuals it will play out if people have to come to their defense about their character? Go ahead, Bam. You had a thought before we kind of lead into that?
I think you should add Bonnie to that plate.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Okay. Add Bonnie.
Okay, and then we're also going to add Bonnie for all of the little pieces of evidence that have been introduced throughout the series, but more importantly, on this episode, he has a wife. So, again, let's just quickly go through Rebecca and kind of what people possibly could say about her, Bonnie and what people could say about her character, and then Annalise.
Okay.
So let's start with Rebecca.
Huh?
Go ahead, Camille.
I think people could say things about Rebecca, but I think in relation to Sam, I don't really think there's much they could use because people really don't see her interacting with Sam except when she was brought in to do the psych eval. She came that one time with the gloves, but nobody else saw that. So we don't really even see her dealing with her to make it seem like she has a real motive or a vendetta against him. Now, Annalise, oh yeah, she's stoic with everybody. She has this. She comes off as very cold. They have the whole cheating thing, the mistress situation. If it goes to trial and she gets named as someone who is considered to be his potential murderer, it's gonna be a long road uphill for her. Poor thing.
How about you, Bam?
Well, Rebecca's problem is the fact that she confessed. So that's really the only thing that I see that is in the way because, like Cornelia said, you don't see her much around. But then again, she's so sneaky. She lies to Wes all the time. Now Wes would have to be involved somehow because he hit her in the hotel. There's so many things that Wes is doing to cover up. That goes against Rebecca. So the fact that you have Wes and now you have Nate, there's small things that could eventually lead up to a big boom for Rebecca. And then Annalise, I mean, I don't think we need to even say anything. I mean, she's doing everything to try to cover her husband. As for Bonnie, when Connor initially asked her to come over for the bonfire, she was like, "Shh, little boy, please." Mm-hmm. But then, as we saw 2 episodes, she wound up being in bed with him. So now, do you think that she potentially killed Sam and then had to go sleep and hop into bed with him as her alibi? That is, that's the potential. So
I think it's definitely plausible.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely possible. Let me just go back to a couple more nuggets of the weekly case, because somehow this weekly case resonated with me, and I really thought it was very symbolic, or in essence mirrored who Annalise is, right? So when Annalise was cross-examining the real estate agent's husband, she goes, "You thought you were sleeping with a woman that was solely yours. You drugged your type A wife, knowing full well she would try to clean it up." So technically, right, we've seen that Annalise's pupils have cleaned up the case. Mm-hmm. Do we think that somehow everyone is being manipulated and that possibly we have no idea who really killed Sam, but whoever did it knew that Annalise's people would do exactly what Annalise's people did? And we don't necessarily need to answer that now, but I definitely think that I feel like we're all being played and that everything has been pre-orchestrated. Whether or not that's Rebecca being where she was supposed to be, but more importantly that the 1Ls, the students, were there, and they basically have been taught for the last semester, however many months, how to get away with murder, and that's exactly what they're doing, is they're putting those actions into practice.
I can see that. Because there's nothing to say that Annalise didn't kill Sam for Lila. I mean, not Lila, for Rebecca. Gave Rebecca one of those tongue-lashing cuss-outs like she does and says, "You need to go along with this, trust me." And now, the wheels are in motion. There's nothing to say that Bonnie didn't do it. We don't know. I agree. I totally agree. I feel like what we're being shown is just what we're being shown. And it's not, it could possibly be something totally different that we didn't expect.
Okay, perfect. Well, let's quickly go through, actually, Bam, it seems like you have one more thought.
And the fact that Michaela stole the idol, so she's the last person with the idol before the idol now is now evidence for Sam's death.
Okay, and do we think, I'm gonna kind of piggyback off of your last statement, and do we think that's possibly why she was the one who had the most visceral response? Every time we saw her at the crime scene, she was in the corner, not able to deal. Do we think that there's possibly a connection with the fact that, just like you said, Bam, she was the last one to have the idol? Why would she have brought the idol to the office? And the fact that she's the most visibly shaken by the act, the murder?
Possibly.
Okay. All right. Well, that's a good segue. Let's quickly talk about Michaela and the whole prenup situation. I mean, her fiance's mother is kind of, I don't even know the appropriate word, but the fact that she shows up at her place of business and, basically bullies her into having a sit-down with her about this prenup. Did that kind of catch you guys off guard? And kind of how do you feel that this scene played out with their dynamic of basically going toe-to-toe, mano-a-mano with each other regarding this prenup?
It did not. I wasn't surprised by it because I did hear that Lynn Whitfield was coming to How to Get Away with Murder to play the mother. And this is no shade. This is not a diss to Lynn Whitfield, the actress, but she's known for playing certain roles. She's known for playing that crazy woman who who's the bitch. So it only made sense that she was gonna come on to How to Get Away with Murder and be what she typically gives us when we see her on the smaller big screen.
Okay. How about you, Cornelia?
Well, when I saw her, I was like, look at Brandy Webb from Thin Line. I thought As soon as she turned around, I was like, oh, yeah, there's Brandy. She's crazy. I didn't necessarily like Bam think, oh, you know, it's a typical role. But the way she was talking to her, I was like, oh, yeah, she's not playing. And then when old girl tried to slap her and she grabbed her arm like that old black mom and was like, you little mother. I was like, yeah, this is going to be good. I enjoyed seeing her on here.
Okay.
And hopefully, I wanted to come back. I liked it.
I agree. And what did you think about the revelation? Because I'll be honest with you, I thought that Michaela came from kind of high pedigree, right? Everything about her, the way that she presents herself, I thought that she was definitely, you know, vacationed either in the Hamptons or Martha's Vineyard, that there was a certain level of an elite lifestyle that was normal to her, that this wasn't new, right? And the way in which Mrs. Walker said, what did she go? She goes, I'm going to send you back to that nasty back alley swamp you came from, you stubborn bitch. And then she goes, oh, when then she tried to slap her, which in essence is quote unquote uncivilized. And the way that the mom said, okay, well, at least I know I was right about you. Does that kind of change our perspective on Michaela of finding out that maybe she came from humble beginnings and she isn't necessarily from the background that I think that many of us viewers thought that she was from? And does that change your viewpoint about her? And does that possibly change your viewpoint about why she wants to marry Aiden and not sign a prenup?
Well, I wasn't surprised. Do you guys remember in Low Down Dirty Shame when Jada Pinkett said, I could see right through all that Maybelline? Yeah, I wasn't buying it from her because, you know, maybe because I'm a guy, but for me that struck a chord when she said to Aiden, if you ever lie to me again, I will divorce you and take you for all your money. Not that I was going to publicly embarrass you, not that I would, like the money issue was the first thing that came out of her mouth. Not that she was going to ruin the political career, not that I would take the kids away and you will never see our beautiful 5 children. The first thing she said was, I'm going to take you for all your money.
But in Michaela's defense, when you grow up a certain way and you want better for yourself, you don't go your whole life acting like or looking like or carrying yourself like you came from nothing. You try to adjust. You try to be the person that you admire or that you want to be or that you think will help you get somewhere. If Michaela was around here acting like she was from the swamps, do you really think that she would be getting any type of respect? Like, she can't be that person. I'm not saying she should turn her back on, you know, who she was, or she should be this fake girl, but I don't see anything wrong with her carrying herself a different way. And maybe she said that to her fiance about taking all of his money because that's what was most important to him. Like, if something is important to somebody, you're not going to say, I'm going to take something else, and if it's not, it doesn't hold any importance. Because we saw after seeing his mom, that money is important to them. That's something that they care about. And it may be something that, you know, it may be more important to her than if Michaela would have said to her mom, to his mom, your son is gay. So I see her saying that to him, like, I'll take all your money, because somewhere down the line he probably made it seem like that was what he really cared about.
My only problem with the one thing that I'm going to disagree with you, Cornelia, is it's one thing to carry yourself in a different way because, you know, just because someone comes from a, you know, say the hood or some form of neighborhood doesn't mean that you have to be a certain way. You know, you can still carry yourself however you were raised. Your living situation does not describe, you know, who you are necessarily. So she doesn't have to come off a certain way, but it's the way that she takes jabs at other people and she thinks that she's better than people is what turns me off about her, because it's okay to carry yourself in a nice way, although you come from the swamps. But the way that you purposely put people down shows the line in the seat about her is what I don't like.
Okay, interesting. Well, I'm going to ask you guys out there, because we've been carrying on this conversation about a prenup. I personally, again, I'm still conflicted. So for me, the way that Michaela said, no, this isn't business, this is totally personal because it's about my marriage to Aiden, and the reason I'm not signing the prenup is because I intend to be married to him for the rest of my life. There's a part of that that sounded extremely naive to me for a multitude of reasons, because arguably everyone goes into a marriage thinking that they're going to be married forever, and as we know, marriage, it's about a 50% divorce rate. Number two, I felt like it was extremely strange given the fact that we had a fissure in their relationship, i.e. that he had slept with Connor and didn't tell her, and that was a break in their trust or their loyalty. And then number three, for the exact reason that you said, Camelia, I felt like it was a little strange given the fact that she does seem to like the finer things in life, and therefore, could you really take money off of the table with Aiden and feel that they could actually be in a relationship? Now, the caveat to that is, and this is why I'm conflicted, is that part of me feels like you take people as they are. So, for instance, if her fiance Aiden has money, that's part of the package. It doesn't mean it's the totality of the package, but should I, as a woman, potentially enter into a marriage with a man who potentially has political aspirations? And as we've seen, no matter how intelligent or the resume of a woman, normally she takes a back seat to the aspirations of her husband. And therefore, if she's going to take a back seat both personally and more importantly professionally, shouldn't she therefore be protected just in case anything goes wrong without potentially being called a gold digger? That's kind of my overall question, and that's, I think, kind of why I'm conflicted, because I do think she's going into it a little naive, but then at the same time, I think that there's a valid reason why a woman should potentially be protected by a prenup to her advantage and not necessarily to her disadvantage, because she gives up more than her male counterpart, i.e. her husband.
I'll go back.
Yeah,
I agree with that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm really curious to see how you viewers think about not only prenups in general, but specifically as it pertains to the storyline with Michaela, whether or not she should sign it, yay or nay, and make your case of why. No matter what you believe, make your case and make a strong one. Well, let's kind of, wrap up and go towards, go ahead, Bam.
I just want to say this. In regards to the prenup, she hasn't even read or looked at the prenup. She doesn't know what it says, what it states. There could be something in there that says that if for some reason this goes wrong, you're only going to get this. I think with the family, despite that very dramatic scene with Lynn and Michaela, Mrs. Walker says, we built this empire from ground up. We started with 10 something, and now we have 50. To now we are this big, this big corporation, and that's a valid point that they don't want to have to lose that. So who's to say? I think what.
I'm going to cut you off, Bam. I'm going to cut you off. Remember, Michaela's had the prenup for a couple of days. Remember, this isn't the first time she's seeing the prenup. She's read through the prenup. Trust me, there is absolutely no way that a woman as intelligent as she is, first of all, not only is she a law student, and we're going to assume that Middleton is a very prestigious university, despite the fact that it's quote-unquote sports-driven, but not only was she pre-med in undergrad, she's now a first-year law student. Therefore, trust me, she read through the prenup, everything line by line by line, number one. Number two, I think that the way that Mrs. Walker was introduced, literally what it's saying is, you come into this marriage with what you had, and you leave the marriage with what you have, and same thing for Aiden. I feel like it's almost very clear, given Mrs. Walker's demeanor, that it's providing her with absolutely nothing, and that the only asset of value is the company, and I'm presuming that Aiden is an only child, and therefore that's what they're 100% protecting. But trust me, Michaela definitely read through the prenup.
Well, the reason that I asked that was because that prenup was like a Bible. It was extremely.
I agree with you. Again, let's just change the scenario really quickly, and then we'll kind of carry on this conversation online. I think it would be different if Michaela was anyone else other than not only a first-year associate, but arguably one of the top students at this prestigious law school.
Gotcha. Okay.
And just as someone who has been to law school, and it's part of the reason I wear glasses now, and I'm not being funny, it's actually the part of the reason I wear glasses, the amount that you learn to read is astronomical. Like, you go from, you know, kind of being a really good student and reading and doing your homework to arguably reading treatises of information. Like, you literally read presumably 300 more pages a night, and it's of small, tiny text. And not only do you read it, you have to be able to ingest it, digest it, and analyze it at a quicker pace than normal people. Because in essence, that's really what law school teaches you. And that's kind of, I think, what the show is trying to show, is it teaches you to be a critical thinker, right? So even in the standpoint that she heard about the STD, she knew exactly what the STD was, and then her brain immediately thought, oh, and I know the antibiotic for that STD, and the reason that I know the antibiotic is that obviously reading through the case materials, when they did some sort of inventory, that prescription must have been on the inventory. So her brain was able to kind of connect the dots really quickly. If anyone watches Sherlock, it's kind of like a low-grade Sherlock. That's what law school teaches you to do, is to pull all sorts of information that you've learned not only in your life, but more importantly in the case and all of the course materials that you've read, to be able to be almost like a pseudo-Google. Does that kind of make sense? So I definitely think that not only did she read it, she's able to read large amounts of information, digest it very quickly, and then therefore make her case. Arguably, and we'll again talk about offline, I think the way she made the case to Mrs. Walker was kind of weak, because it was based on emotion and there was no substance to it. But again, we'll talk about it offline. So let us know how you think about Michaela and the prenup, and then prenups in general. Let's kind of close up the wrap report today and really talk about that final scene, or the final two scenes, when, you know, Bonnie in essence literally fell on her knees and confessed to Annalise that she not only had spoke to Sam, but that Sam confessed to her that he knew about the pregnancy and that Sam kissed her. How did that resonate with you guys? Because I know that for me, it was an emotional scene for me, and it left me really not understanding where Annalise was going. In so much as, no matter what you say about Bonnie being a mousy presence, she theoretically is the only person who has Annalise's back, and she was really coming to her almost as if Annalise was the Pope or some kind of a religious figure or the Godfather, and on bended knee was confessing and asking for her forgiveness. How did that resonate with you?
I see your point, Sophia, but I'm going to just play the other side for just in case. There are situations in real life where, okay, say I'm dating Sophia, and Sophia and Cornelia, you guys are friends, but I really like Cornelia, but Cornelia kind of comes at me in a certain way, so I allow her to do what Sam does, to get that kiss, and now as you know, as the other person, now I need to go back and run to Sophia and say, well, you know, Cornelia, kiss me, because I need to get to you first before Cornelia goes back and says, yeah, well, you know, me and Bam, blah 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 blah. So for me, it could be looked at that Bonnie had to run back to Annalise first and give her side of the story to cover her ass.
Yeah, I kind of see that when it happened, when Bonnie, you know, confessed to Annalise. My thought process was, okay, well, Bonnie, what are you trying to prove here? What are you trying to do? Because the whole time we see that you kind of feel a certain way about Sam. You're willing to lie for him. You'll try to sneak and tell him information, or to try to let him know what's going on so that he's aware of, you know, the whispers or whatnot. You kiss him. When you were talking to him like you really had feelings for him, and now you telling Annalise. So I don't understand what her point is in doing this. Maybe it's like what Bam said, she wants to hurry up and get to Annalise and tell her before he got to do it. But I don't know. It was just weird, because yeah, she told him exactly what Sam said, but why, Bonnie? Why?
Okay.
Like, why?
And I see this, and I think I might get this scene from a movie wrong, but have either of you guys or our viewers seen American Beauty with Kevin Spacey?
Yeah.
Do you remember the young girl? It was his daughter's best friend, right? And arguably she's like about 16, and she was arguably flirting with him all the way throughout the movie, right? However, when he actually made a move on her, she was like surprised and disgusted, right? Because I think that there was a childlike aspect of her that when the reality of it hit, she now viewed him in a completely different light. I feel like there's an analogy between Bonnie and Sam. I feel like Bonnie has this kind of immature, naive, weird essence about her when it pertains to Sam, right? That almost, she's in puppy love with him. And that there was a certain reality of the kiss, and the kiss in relationship to the fact that she learned information that he could possibly be a murderer, that the reality of him versus the fantasy of him, she snapped back into reality that this is still someone's husband who's kissing her, and is he kissing her and telling her this because he's manipulating her? I think that in that moment, you really realize that her true loyalty was to Annalise. And that not only was her true loyalty to Annalise, because arguably Annalise must have saved her from something, because there's definitely this weird maternal childlike dynamic going on. But the way she said he's not a good guy, I think she was honestly, it's because she just realized it. She was having a revelation and had to share it with Annalise that he's not a good guy, hoping that somehow they would bond together, if that makes sense. And I think she was really choosing sides, and she was choosing Annalise's side. Now, more importantly, do you think that Annalise made the wrong call by then firing her, right? Number one. And number two, do you think she fired her because she lied, or do you think she fired her because she kissed Sam? Or more importantly, do you think she fired her because Sam told Bonnie the truth when he wouldn't tell Annalise the truth, and that truth somehow equates to safety? And that for her, that was the ultimate betrayal in the fact that Sam confided in Bonnie and not in Annalise.
Well, that's not Bonnie's fault, but I think that Annalise is acting purely through emotion, and I don't think she thought it out wisely. So I think it was an emotional decision. But what's confusing with all the flashbacks and stuff, is she really fired? She obviously, is she coming back? I get so confused with the flashbacks that are we in the present? Are we still in flashbacks?
I think that happens in real time. I think that literally is the day before or the night, either the day before or the night of the murder is when, to me, this happens. Because remember, it's the whole aspect of the bonfire.
Yeah.
I think she fired her for all of those. I think she fired her because Bonnie took it to that level where she went through all of that to find out at that very moment that Sam wasn't a good guy. After she stood in that bedroom and heard that he could potentially be Lila's baby daddy, and she knew he was a cheater, and after she showed that she's willing to be sneaky, sticking information to him or about him, I think she lied because I think she fired her because she's insecure. I think she fired her because she got overly emotional. I think all of those things were the reason why she fired Bonnie. But again, I'm more questioning, as a lawyer or somebody in that profession, why Bonnie gave her the information the way she did. That's what I'm a little offset about. Like, Bonnie, why, if you had this information and you knew this is how you got it, is that the way you should have given it to a woman like Annalise?
And I also think that it was not a smart decision for Annalise to fire her, because as Annalise is trying to cover potentially her husband murdering Lila, she's going to need Bonnie to help fix the situation. But by now you firing Bonnie, now Bonnie can go to the other side. She can testify. She could do something that could potentially hurt Annalise.
I think that's an excellent point, but I think it leads us to the final scene when Annalise is calling the DA and almost demands a DNA test on the child, on the fetus, and she demands that all of the men in Lila's life, including her teachers, are tested to see if they're potentially a match for the DNA of the 6-week-old fetus. So, do we think that Annalise has now switched sides? Do we think that she wants the truth to come out, or do you think she's purely being vindictive, or do we think that she's still acting on emotion and she doesn't quite know what she wants?
I think she's a little bit of acting on emotion, but I think by the way she was sitting on the stairs, she went back into lawyer mode, and she's somewhat thinking for herself. So I think it's a little emotion, but I also think that she wants to have every man in her life, and Lila's life, tested. So now you have to now go back to the football player. Sam did say, well, is he really a virgin? Which I also kind of wonder, is this the football player who... You're right. So I wonder if the football player is using that to have an image, because everybody has an image or a brand now. So the football player story may come back into to play because, is he really a virgin? So you have a lot of men that we are going to potentially figure out who else is involved in this situation. So it's 50-50 for me.
I think her emotions are still involved, because if they weren't, she wouldn't have told Sam what she was planning to do. She would have just let them come to Sam and say, we're testing every man in his life, and you were her teacher, so give us that DNA. I think the fact that she told him was kind of to give him a heads up, and was still in a way kind of trying to protect him, because you don't know what he could and could not do to get out of that situation. So I think she didn't tell him as, this is the final nail in the coffin. I think she told him, like, this is what I could do to destroy you. You need to figure out what you need to do so you won't destroy yourself.
No, I think that's excellent. I think that's excellent points. And I think that, we're halfway through the season. As Bam explained to us a couple weeks ago, there are only 15 episodes. So this is episode 8, so we're at the halfway mark. So I think that the back 8 is going to be extremely telling. And I think that now that we've been fully introduced to these characters, I think that we have points. I think that we're going to learn a lot more, because now I think that they can speed up the pace a little bit, because we know the characters, and now they can really delve into all of these open-ended questions. And I think that the open-ended questions are, who killed Sam? I think the open-ended questions are, who killed Lila? And more importantly, specifically as it pertains to Sam, who is going to be charged with Sam's murder? And the last open-ended question that I would love for our viewers to comment on and make their case, something that we didn't talk about, is this Sam's MO? Does he target young girls, but more importantly, virgins? I think there was a comment that Annalise made about knowing whether or not she was a virgin that seemed too much as if she was speaking about herself. And I think that we're going to find out a lot more about her backstory. So again, not necessarily that he's a predator, but is this his MO of seducing young girls, but more importantly, virgins, and how that is going to come into play? So again, make your case about who killed Lila, who killed Sam, whether or not this is his MO of basically going after young girls, and more importantly, who is going to be brought to answer for Sam's murder. Again, jump online out there and make your case on Google+, on Twitter, on YouTube, but definitely join the conversation. This has been a great Wrap Report, you guys. Where can everyone find you so that they can continue the conversation? Cornelia?
You can find me at Cornelia on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
And Bam?
You can find me on all social media at Bam Erickson.
And you can find me on Twitter and on Facebook at Sophia Stanley. Again, you've been watching the Wrap Report, How to Get Away with Murder, Episode 8. We hope you've enjoyed. And again, jump online and continue the conversation.